packed, so we're gonna go to a book signing, supposedly.
Mysterious Galaxy, an independent bookstore. It specifies that on the awning.
Oh yeah. This bookstore is cool. This bookstore is really cool. What you doing? What you doing? Ooh. That sounds interesting. Was it George R.R. Martin I saw?
No.
Well, it says something about George R.R. Martin. I can read.
Oh,
he reviewed
it's like
it.
a cross between Jurassic Park and Game of Thrones.
I learned to read all by myself.
Look at the bottom paragraph here.
Is he? Knights riding dinosaurs. I could not tell. This place is cool. Look at that. This place is rad.
Okay, cool. So it'll be the first time for a lot of you guys. It's a real pleasure. He wrote Warm Bodies and New Hunger, and some of you guys saw the movie Warm Bodies. This book is taking us into a much larger, wider world. It's apocalyptic. There's other types of people dealing with the plague, a lot of suspense, and we just want to let him talk about it, but give him a big hand and thank you for coming.
Thank you. So, how many of you were expecting me to do a reading or something, like a performance from the book? Nobody? Okay. Okay. I used to think that's what book tours were all about, is that I would do, performance and then sign books, but apparently no one does that anymore. So I don't know if they said I was going to do a talk, but I don't really have a talk either. I kind of just, well, first of all, how many of you even know who I am? Or is there some of you just wander in here? Okay. Okay. So I don't need to fill you in on what the book's about and all of that stuff. So basically, it's for your questions. I'm here. I'm going to sign books, and then I guess I'll give you a little summary of what my writing life has been about, how I got to this point, and then just whatever you want to know, I'm happy to chat with you. So. I'm not going to tell you my whole life, but writing life. Warm Bodies started it in about 2008, and that was a whole kind of complicated, boring story as to how that got published, which is always the question people want to know because they want to get published, and it's like, what's your secret? And I don't really have a secret. It kind of was just putting my stuff out there. I had short stories on my blog, and was just doing it for years and years and years, and then eventually somebody sort of stumbled across it and introduced me to an editor who was like an editor for hire, who I then hired after I wrote Warm Bodies, and then she kind of took me as a pet project and sent my book to an agent and a film producer, and they both kind of came on board at more or less the same time. So that
freezing your feet off. He said, "This is where I wrote most of Warm Bodies."
Yeah.
Where's that porch at? And how cold was it?
Way too cold. That porch was, so when the movie option happened before I actually, it was like a few months before I actually got the book deal. They were sort of in the works at the same time. And so when I got the first little chunk of money from that, which was like a small percentage of the actual deal, I basically jumped out on a limb. I just said, I'm taking this money and I'm running. I'm quitting my job. I'm going to just hope for the best. So I quit my job and I moved into just the cheapest living situation I could find, which was living in a house with 7 people in a college town where it was this house that was literally sinking into the earth. It was about that crooked. All the doors were pointing different directions, and there were 7 very insane 20-year-olds living there. And I was trying to edit a book while they're having, they're shotgunning beers and going nuts in the house. So I just pretty much lived on the porch in this house. And it happened to be winter at the time as well. So that particular picture, I think, was taken.
Because you're bundled up pretty good.
Yeah, I would be out there covered in blankets and hoods and everything, just can't feel my fingers, but I'm trying to type on my laptop battery's quitting because it's too cold. But I couldn't go into the house because it was mayhem in there.
Yeah.
And this is, it would be after the coffee shops were closed or something. So I think that picture was taken the night before I sent the book off to the publishers, because there was this very fraught late night moment where it was the next day that my agent had told everybody tomorrow's the day, we're going to send it to you, get ready. And then like a day before that, he said, by the way, you should rewrite the whole ending of the book. Because I just realized that this doesn't make sense. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. I have 2 days to fix this. So it was kind of just late nights out on the porch. And the day of, I was up literally all night till the sun came up, just out there trying to make this scene work. And knew I'd probably get another pass or two, but I needed to get it functional before I sent it to them. So there were some dire times back then, and there are again. Now my house is falling apart. So it's a cycle, but yeah, at least it's not quite as cold anymore.
Nice. Thanks.
Yeah.
So was it your idea to do the sequel? Was it in your brain as soon as you finished the first one, or was this something that your agent decided that you should do?
Nobody decided it for me, but they certainly suggested it. It wasn't so much my agent. Actually, oddly enough, my agent and publisher don't really seem to care what I do. They don't pressure me about anything. They're just like, oh, you have a new book? Sure, we'll take a look at it. But they don't ever, push me on my career. It was readers that would be the only ones pressuring for that, which there were quite a few who did that. But I did have the idea in my head. It was kind of when I finished the book. I mean, I don't know how many of you have read the book. The movie ends on a much more
Lighter
note.
note.
It's kind of like everything's fine now and happy ever after. Whereas the book is much more ambiguous. Like there's something that's started, and R has just sort of begun his life, but there's a whole list of questions from that point. Now okay, he's breathing, but now what? He doesn't have any personality. He doesn't have a past. There's all these mentions in Warm Bodies of these other groups, like these militias and things that have been terrorizing the area, who are haven't been seen yet. So there's all this stuff around the peripheral that I figured, I had an idea in my head of what would happen next. They're obviously going to be facing a challenge of trying to expand on this little tiny revolution that they've started, whatever that has caused this little group of zombies to recover their life. They don't know what it is, they don't understand how it happened, and it's very localized. So there's going to be this whole push of, how do we spread this to the rest of the world, and who's going to try to stop us, which there's always people against progress. Whatever it is, there's going to be somebody who disagrees and wants to go back to the way things were before. So that was always in my mind, but I didn't really think that I was going to write it because it was my first book and I had never published anything before, and I wasn't thinking like, let's come right out of the gate with a zombie quadrilogy or something. That seemed a little overly ambitious. So I'm like, I'm just trying to get anything published. I'm not going to come to the publisher saying, I have a whole series for you, because they would be, considering how absurd the premise is. They're like, no one's going to buy a whole series of this. It's kind of a fluke that I ended up where I am. So yeah, I had the idea, but I didn't actually plan to write it because I just didn't think it was feasible. Once it kind of became successful, and then I started to think maybe people would actually stick around for this, and then I started to think about it more seriously and kind of figure out the details of what I might do with it. And it still took a couple years to figure out like what the central push of it would be, because I felt like I kind of resolved one of them in Warm Bodies, and I didn't want to just do it again. I wanted to take it to the next level. So it took some time to kind of figure out what that would be personally, like in just my own personal development, because it follows in parallel with what's going on in my life. And writing Warm Bodies was kind of a process for myself, almost like a therapeutic thing, where I figured out some things about myself in the process of writing it. So then doing the sequel, I'm like, okay, I'm asking much bigger, more complicated questions. Now I have to answer those questions before I can write the ending of this, or else I don't know where I'm going with this. So it took a while to generate that resolution in myself and then translate it into fiction. Yeah.
Do the Romeo and Juliet parallels stop in the sequel?
They definitely fade to the background.
Yeah.
There's a few more. I mean, there's more characters. The parallels in Warm Bodies were mostly just names. There's a few moments where there's some story parallels and some subtle. Yeah, that one is kind of the one where most people suddenly click for it. But yeah, like there's characters where the structure kind of continues, but that was never supposed to be like the whole the concept. It wasn't like a written. I got to talk to the director as he was writing it, and he would ask me, you know, what time period do you see this as being, or like what does this mean, or something, and then I would tell him, and then he would translate it through his own concept and come up with the result. So yeah, it was.
You probably didn't come across like you have to do it like this.
No, and because I'm a lot of authors are like that, and that's the reason that I understand the reality of a different medium. They're just like, why aren't you doing everything that I wrote? You have to write. You have to film my book verbatim. And I also am interested in film, so I'm like, I know that that's not how it works, and it shouldn't work that way, because you don't want to. If it's going to be a TV series, maybe. But even then, there's certain shifts that you have to make. But for like an hour-and-a-half movie, there's an inevitable amount of boiling down that has to happen. So, yeah, I wasn't coming into it from that point of view. I was very moderate and realistic as to what my expectations were, and there were some things that stuck out to me that I was like, that doesn't make sense within the internal logic of the movie, not just with my story. So you should change that. And then there were some things where, you know, I just thought they were missing something, but generally I was viewing it from their perspective, not mine as the writer. So I think that was helpful, because that made them more receptive to what I had to say, and they weren't just like, get this asshole out of here, this prima donna author who every director dreads. So, and you know, we still have a good relationship now because of that. Jonathan Levine just wrote the introduction for one of my excerpts, so we're cool. Yeah.
Was it your idea to include some of the illustrations from the book in the movie? You can kind of see them on some of the walls in the background.
Really? the anatomical drawings?
One of them was on the main gate when Julie comes back, and they're scanning her. There's like,
I haven't noticed that, actually. I'll have to pay closer attention. I know there's a bunch of graffiti, and they have a couple of pictures of skulls and stuff, but I haven't noticed any that were actually those illustrations. I mean, those illustrations are certainly not mine. They're from the Gray's Anatomy medical textbook, which is, you know, public domain. It's well known, but they did include a lot of actual chapter graphics in their little behind the scenes featurette at the end. So that was cool. They showed actual pictures of the pages of the book. Generally, they were very respectful of the book, I thought, even though they changed quite a bit about the movie. It within the context of someone else's vision, it was like they kind of went much further than they had to involve me in the process and to kind of credit me in the behind the scenes stuff. So I feel pretty good about it, even though it's a very different kind of story. I mean, they were pitching it to a different audience and wanted a different tone, and they achieved it really well, I think. It's not the kind of movie that I would have wanted to make, but I think it works really well for that type of movie.
I thought the scene with Perry when he was like eating his brains, and it goes into like the musical number, and you see the little flashbacks with the fireworks and the bike and in the school. I thought that was really well done. Like when I saw it in the theaters, I started going, oh,
yeah.
It's just like the book.
Yeah, there's a couple scenes. There's that one, and then the scene when they're in the bedroom, and then it goes into that dream sequence in the orchard. I feel like those two were probably the closest that got to the book's feel. Like the in the book, there's a lot of kind of popping in and out of different layers of reality. There's like what's actually happening, and then there's, you know, his memories from Perry, and then there's his dreams, and kind of all these different things going on that are more or less real. And the movie, for the most part, is pretty much realism, but when they do kind of venture into that realm, it got me pretty excited, because it's like kind of feels more like what I remember. And to actually see it visualized really well with beautiful cinematography, particularly that first memory sequence is when he's showing him as a kid and everything. That always gets me.
And the convertible going across, and
Yeah.
even though the little kids aren't in the car, you still see them kind of standing there and watching the car go by. So I thought that was kind of a
great that
cool
they
little
threw that
flash
in.
to that. Yeah, they're
They
his
don't-
children.
Yeah, they don't feature into the story at all in the movie, but if you're a fan of the book, you might realize like, oh, it's them.
The little Easter eggs.
While I would love to, it's way more profitable. I mean, you can write something like that and pump it out in a couple weeks and toss it off to some studio, and they'll chop it up and do whatever to it, and you won't recognize it, but then they give you millions of dollars. It wouldn't be bad, but it wouldn't be enjoyable to me at all. So I have a really hard time like when this was all happening, I actually have a film agent as well who basically came on board hoping that I would do something someday that he could make money off of, which has not happened yet because he keeps trying to get me like, oh, you gotta, you know, do like jobs for other movies. You gotta punch up someone else's script or like be a co-writer on a commercial or something. Like that's just great money. And I'm just like, I don't care. I don't want to do it. If I don't feel it, I can't. I almost physically can't write it if I don't like it because the words just don't come out. So I'm not ruling it out. I think I'm much more interested in directing movies than writing scripts for other people to direct. If I ever did it, I think I would be the writer-director kind of guy because I do love. I actually just sort of made a film, a book trailer for this that turned out to be a pretty high budget. Well, not high budget. It looks like it's high budget. Very, very small budget, but it ended up being like a film. Like we had a cast and professional cameras and all this stuff going on, and Bill was basically ended up being the director, and it was pretty exhilarating to be there and like watch the images come to life. But that's something that I have complete control over because it's my project and nobody's financing me, so I can just do whatever I want. So I could see myself doing those kind of things someday, but I don't really want to be part of the system, the studio system. Even if, yeah, it would have to be a lot of money. Something I could do very quickly before I start hating myself. Yeah.
What's been one of your favorite fan moments, or some of your favorite fan moments in coming across
This
people
right
who?
now is my favorite.
Don't be that guy.
What do you mean by fan moments?
Oh, just like something that maybe like fan art someone's given you, or just a conversation that you've had at like a book signing or stuff like that.
I have gotten some amazing fan art, mostly sent to me on the internet, but most of my favorites are on my Facebook page for the book, which you can browse. But yeah, some of that, there's some pretty incredible stuff when it particularly is based on the book. There's a lot of stuff out there that's just, you know, drawing of Nicholas Hoult with hearts around it, you know. Those and like, okay, he's nice, he's a good looking guy, but it's nothing to do with me. But then there's ones where they're actually, you can tell that they cared about the characters of the story and they wrote something, or they drew something that has some emotion to it, and that's always very moving to me. And then sometimes people will write, it's usually in written form. There's not a lot of people that come to me in person and tell me how, you know, these deep personal things about their experience with the book. But once in a while I'll get messages from people or emails or sometimes letters where they talk about like how, not just that they enjoyed the book, but like it helped them in some way, like it got them through a hard time or helped them to kind of figure out some essential thing about themselves that they needed to live better, and just whatever it may be. That's kind of the ultimate compliment for a writer, because I do want to write things that are entertaining. I want them to be enjoyable, but if that's all it is, I don't care at all. Like there has to be some takeaway, some sort of thing that I can connect to in life, and that's why I write things. That's what I try to put into things I'm writing. But I always think, you know, what are the odds that anyone who's not me is going to resonate with this in the same way that I do, because it's coming out of my head. And once in a while I hear from people like that where they tell me basically it did the same thing for them that it did for me, and that's an incredible feeling. Kind of like, even if it's just a random comment on Facebook, it's the accumulation of those sort of keeps me going, keeps me, especially when I'm writing about such ridiculous things. There's always moments where I'm like, what am I doing? How am I writing 4 novels about zombies? And so moments like that are kind of a refresher, like, okay, it's not totally stupid. There's a purpose to it for some people.
Thanks for coming.
You drove far away.
Yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Last in line. Hello.
All right.
How are you?
The glasses for the finale.
Yeah, there you go. Everybody's like, well, this is some Elton John looking glasses. I'm like, they help with eye strain, and I definitely do feel like I need a piano in front of me right now.
Make the world a little prettier.
Exactly.
What's your name?
Amanda. But yeah, so thanks for your writing.
Yeah, thank you.
Can't wait to digest this. All right, have a good one.
Thanks.